Mr. Bert Caloud is the Superintendent of the Aisne-Oise Cemetery in Seringes-et-Nesles. He has completed a military career in the Marine Corps, and after assisting the Superintendent of the Manila American Cemetery, he is now the Superintendent of the Aisne-Marne Cemetery. Mr. Caloud, what was at stake for the Battle of the Croix Rouge Farm on the morning of the 25th of July, 1918?
On the 25th of July 1918, the Rainbow Division was moving forward to take the place of the 26th Division. So the Battle of Belleau Woods had been fought, and across from the cemetery is the 26th Division Chapel. So in the following weeks, they had moved about 10 miles and had been halted by the Germans at La Croix Rouge Farm. They suffered a high number of casualties and needed to be replaced by the Rainbow Division. So the Rainbow Division had moved from east of Château-Thierry and forward up to the Croix Rouge Farm. And on the 25th, the day before the attack, was the day that they were exchanging positions and preparing to attack.
In Send the Alabamians, a particularly well-documented work by Nimrod Frazer, the words of Major Smith read, "I always felt that it would be a sacrifice of troops to make an attack from those woods without artillery." In your opinion, was the Battle of the Croix Rouge Farm reliant on heroism or madness?
You're asking for a simple answer to a complicated question. Well, when the attack began, they had problems using artillery to fire on the Germans because they were exchanging places with the 26th Division. So it was really a coordination problem. But if you read the book, soldiers were running to get into position to start the attack. Some started late, some started early. So whether or not it was heroism or madness, I mean, they were experienced soldiers. They had been in combat. They had savvy officers. They knew what they were doing. They were told to attack, and they got on with it. I wouldn't say they were mad. They're certainly heroic, but they did their duty. They did their duty. They didn't have time to think about where's the artillery or let's get on with it. They ran to the line of departure, and they assaulted the positions with no artillery. It's just how it worked out. It's just how it worked out.
Mr. Caloud, we are here at the Aisne-Oise Cemetery, the second largest American cemetery of the First World War. Of the 6,012 men buried here, how many fell at the Battle of the Croix Rouge Farm?
I've tried to get you an exact answer. You have to remember at the end of World War I, American families had a choice. They could repatriate the remains to the United States, or they could ask for an overseas burial. And it's about a 60-40 split. So about 60% of the identified dead were returned to the United States, and about 40% remained here. So not everyone killed at the Battle of Croix Rouge Farm is buried in France. And some of them are here, and some of them are in the Aisne-Marne Cemetery. There were soldiers killed the day before the 26th, the attack, and there were soldiers killed the day after. But specifically on 26 July, the attack started in the afternoon, I believe about 3 p.m., and it lasted into the evening. There are 67 Alabamians killed in what was called the Battle of Croix Rouge Farm, and 52 are buried here. There's another 14 in Aisne-Marne Cemetery, but they're primarily missing. Their names are engraved on the chapel in Aisne-Marne Cemetery. There's also the Iowa Regiment was involved, and there's 27 Iowans buried here that were killed on the 26th of July at the Battle of Croix Rouge Farm. So the numbers of the two regiments are less than 100. It would be about 75 Alabamians and Iowans killed at the Battle of Croix Rouge Farm here in Aisne Cemetery.
Among these men, is there anyone in particular that calls your attention? And for what reasons?
Well, the author was in D Company, 1st Battalion, 167th. There's 4 of his mates in Plot B. I can't say any one of the 4 stick out. I've looked at all the names, and what stands out is there's a Sergeant James Vaughn from Waterloo, Iowa, who received the Distinguished Service Cross that day. And of all the soldiers buried here, killed at La Croix Rouge Farm, he's the only one that has a decoration, was decorated for valor, although they were all very heroic soldiers.
Commissioner Seefried, you are a French citizen born in Carthage, Tunisia, spent most of her youth in different European countries before marrying an Austrian citizen. She then moved to Atlanta, where she taught courses on ancient history at the University of Emory, and she also served as a curator. In 2000, as a demonstration of her passion for history and education, she founded the Center for the Advancement and Study of International Education. She also served 6 years as worldwide president of the International Baccalaureate Organization. Nearly 1,500 professors benefit from the courses provided by the center, which we'll call CASE. Today, she is commissioner of the U.S. World War I Centennial Commission, and she's just overseen the translation of Nimrod Frazer's Send the Alabamians. Ms. Brouillet-Seefried, you are particularly involved in the memorial of the Battle of the Croix Rouge Farm. What does it mean to you?
To me, it means the sacrifice of so many young men who came to help France in a time of need. And it has been a work of love to thank Americans for what they did for France. I am a French citizen. I am also a US citizen. My children are Austrians, French and American, and so this Battle of Croix Rouge Farm is really a way to hope that it will never happen again.
In several instances, Nimrod Frazer, author of the work Send the Alabamians, praises the men's qualities. Citing Lieutenant Louis Greet on page 194, "Wonder what the Kaiser thinks of Alabama. How do you see these men from Alabama?"
I see these men from Alabama arriving here after the Battle of Champagne, where they performed brilliantly with the French under General Gouraud. And I would say that they must have felt pretty cocky because they were very proud of what they had done. And you need to think that those men of Alabama were all raised as son or grandson of Confederate soldiers. For them, serving in the military was being someone. They came from very, very poor communities. Many joined the National Guard not only as a way to see the world, but as a way to earn a living. But they were incredibly courageous and also ready to fight. Already Alexis de Tocqueville, in his book on traveling through the United States, described the Alabamians as ready to settle any argument with their fist. So this is a little bit part of that description of their temperament.
Okay. The French army is one of conscription, while young Americans, such as the Alabama boys, voluntarily joined the First World War, though it had not reached their territory nor threatened them directly. What forces can push a man, an American, to do this and endanger his life?
I think part of my earlier answer covers this topic, which means that they were really raised in the admiration of the military. All of them had the statue of a Confederate soldier in their hometown, and joining the National Guard was the thing to do. It meant the respect of the community. It meant seeing the world. So I would say that they also were raised with, all of them knew about Lafayette. They were raised with the story of Lafayette. You have a Lafayette came in the 1820s to the US, went to Georgia, went to Alabama. You have small towns which are called Fayetteville, Lafayette. And so the depth of gratitude for the French, for their role in the American Revolution was really very, very strong.
In his work, Speaking of Courage, published in 1990, Tim O'Brien, a veteran of the Vietnam War, wrote on page 100, "A true war story is never moral. There is no rectitude whatsoever. There is no virtue." The work of Nimrod Frazer also evokes disturbing subjects, like William March in K Company, published in 1933. Are there any flaws in the story of the boys of Alabama that makes them more human, more like us?
I would say that they were definitely human. They were discovering another world. They also discovered, coming here in France, that the world was not a segregated world. But they came back to the United States as Americans. And that, to me, is the biggest lesson of the story of the soldiers from Alabama. They left Alabama as Southerners. They came back to Alabama as Americans.
When one reads Send the Alabamians, one can understand the Battle of the Croix Rouge Farm was decisive in the Second Battle of the Marne to force the Germans back. It's known that memory holds most often the remarkable deeds of a period. So, in your opinion, why is it that the Battle of the Croix Rouge Farm is not stronger in our collective memories?
We first need to remember that World War I is really not strong in the collective American memory. Second, for the Alabamians, it was a very important battle. It is still, to this day, in history, the second battle where they lost the most men after Little Round Top during the Civil War. So it is something very important in the history of Alabama. As far as its role in the Great War, its importance comes from the fact that the Alabamians, with the Iowans, pushed back the German and opened a way for the whole of the rainbow to come up, and they aligned on the Oak River and pushed back the Germans on the other side of the Oak. From that time on, the German never moved west again.
Today, the United States enter their first centennial of the First World War with strong commemoration. How do the World War I Centennial Commission and the American Battalion Monument Commission want to honor these men, as well as the heroic battle?
So I think that we, as the World War I Centennial Commission, work in collaboration with the American Battle Monument Commission to honor those Americans who served on the battlefield and gave their life in the service of democracy. The role of the World War I Centennial Commission is wider than the role of ABMC, because the World War I Centennial Commission is also responsible of commemorating the role of Americans on the home front. What happened in the United States, all the million of women who started in the labor force because the men, 4 million men, were in uniform. All the changes that World War I brought to the US. World War I is what made the United States a world power. World War I is also the beginning of the transatlantic alliance. And so we really want to highlight not only the causes and the war itself, but the role of the United States in the peace. Let's not forget, the United States entered World War I not because of an aggression, but because it wanted to help bring peace. And thereafter, the role of the United States in the creation of the League of Nations, and the role of American philanthropists in rebuilding France is an incredible message of the unselfishness of the American people.
With the American Battle Monuments Commission, our charter was written in the 20s, was headed by General John J. Pershing, who commanded the American Expeditionary Force in France in World War I. One of our pillars is that time shall not dim the glory of their deeds. And our mission is somewhat commemorative because it's nearly 100 years since these men have given their lives. Specifically for the 100th anniversary, the American Battle Monuments Commission will host a series of commemorative ceremonies in our cemeteries. It will commence in May, the anniversary in Canthony by the Somme Cemetery. It will move on to June, the Marne Cemetery, the Battle of Belleau Woods. Here in Oisne, commemorating the Second Battle of the Marne in July, and through the rest of our cemeteries, the Saint-Mihiel, the Meuse-Argonne, and culminating in November 2018 with the armistice.